Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Quack&Co, the channel where everything is 10 minutes or less all the time, every time, and this video is not our Kickstarter speed roundup this week, not this time. Instead, I have a video of 10 Kickstarters that will tempt me this coming September, this month basically. And the reason for that is because of the fact that, for those who don't watch over on my main channel over on BoardgameCo, I have a series where I talk about the games I backed and didn't back, and the one that's going to be going up this week is going to be covering the fact that I backed very, very few games this past month. In the past several months, I've been backing fewer and fewer games. I've gone from backing some months 10 games in a single month to backing 3-4 titles a month, and even then very cheap ones. I've gotten more conservative and more strict with what I'm backing, primarily to save money, primarily because there's always more games. It's always a conversation and a balance between trying to get the things you want versus trying to have a little bit of shelf control, and I've been better at the shelf control argument. Until this month, that is. I don't know what I'm backing. I don't know exactly what I will be backing or not in September. What I do know is here, from all the campaigns that I currently know about coming in September, here are the ones that are tempting me. Here are the ones that I think I'll be spending money on. Most, if not all of these, I'd guess at least 7 of these I end up backing, probably even 8 or 9. I don't know, we'll see what happens, but my shelf control only works so well, and I think the only works so well is up until the point where they tempt me with too many good campaigns. And so with that, let's go ahead and talk about the campaigns that are tempting me, the 10 campaigns that are tempting me, and why they are. Starting with Forsaken. Forsaken from Game Trace, from Travis Chance from Game Trace. This is one that's tempting me primarily because I've had the opportunity to play it 3 times now and have really enjoyed it more and more as I played it. For me, it thrives as a 2-player experience. Forsaken thrives as a 2-player sandbox adventure in which you're running around trying to accomplish your goals, and while it is a lot to pick up, I highly recommend checking out my review of the game. There's a lot going on, there's a lot to pick up, there's a barrier to entry here in terms of the amount of stuff that you have to learn, in terms of some of the fiddliness of trying to manage different cards and put the story in play and read from a bunch of narrative text. But it does work really well. This one overall is a campaign that is absolutely tempting me because at the end of the day, I very much enjoyed the experience despite the amount of work to get there. Then we have Quodd Heroes 2nd Edition. This almost doesn't count, it's a 2nd edition, but I'll probably spend enough money on it that it does count. Quodd Heroes is a game that is absolutely fantastic. I do not play it as often as I should, but every single time I do, I'm reminded of just how worthwhile this game is to own, even for the 1 or 2 times a year it gets tabled. I should play it more, that's what I should be doing, but in the meantime, while I don't play it more, I enjoyed the fact that I enjoy it. I enjoy it so much. It's such a good programming game as you try to figure out how to optimize around trying to get towards your goal, using your quad, using their abilities. It is just so tempting, and the 2nd edition makes it more accessible while adding more stuff, including a solo gameplay going through that. Overall, this is one that I really enjoyed the original 1st edition of it. I'm excited to dive into the 2nd edition. Then we have Rise and Fall from Ludically. Another game that I've had the opportunity to play. Rise and Fall from Ludically is it's not even like, I mean, it's an area control game to an extent, but it's an area control game with a unique implementation of how it actually works as you try to manage your units, because you're going to have certain units, you're trying to build your units out, trying to focus either on the variety of different abilities they'll have, or to focus on certain units so you can activate them more strongly when you do activate them. It's an interesting balance of trying to figure out when to fade out your certain card types so that they're no longer in your hand, no longer slowing you down, versus when you'll lose access to those abilities, and so you need to be mindful of that. Rise and Fall is an excellent game that so far, I kind of want more combat in it. I do want more stuff happening in it, but from my plays of Rise and Fall so far, this is one that sadly, or not sadly, depending how you look at it, is definitely tempting me. Then we have Legacy of You. Legacy of You is one that I definitely want this game. To me, the only question is whether I get it on Kickstarter or not. I generally have avoided getting Garphill games on Kickstarter. For me, I find I can often get them cheaper after the fact, and so I usually wait, and I'm patient, and Legacy of You is intriguing enough to me. As a solo campaign game, it's intriguing enough to me that I don't know if I'll have the patience that I normally do. So, we'll see what happens with this one, but it has a solo campaign game, it has great art, it looks like a game that'll compel me. I think ultimately the Kickstarter will be the determining factor as to whether I end up getting this one on Kickstarter or wait till retail, but this is definitely one I'm getting. The only question to me is when I'm getting it. Then we have the Fox Experiment from Pandasaurus Games. The Fox Experiment is one that you're going to be playing through a more intricate roll and write experience. It's a roll and write experience that looks like it has a lot going on as you try to figure out how to gather your dice, how to breed progressive generations of foxes. There's a lot going on in this game that seems to drift into, officially speaking, a roll and write game, but there's a lot more going on as far as the intricacy of how in-depth this experience goes. This is one I've had a chance to briefly see, not play, to briefly see from Pandasaurus Games, to pop it up on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator or whatever, and see how all the mechanics intertwine. It's one that I'm very much excited for, although one that I haven't had a chance to play just yet, but definitely excited for this one. Again, another one that I'm certainly interested in. The question is whether I get it on Kickstarter or whether I have a lot more self-control, because it's easier to convince myself that I shouldn't get a game when I haven't actually played it. When I have played it, I'm very victim to what happens next. Then we have Rivet Wars Reloaded from Steamforge Games. This is one that I have all the original first edition content. And I want this version of the game because I want the solo campaign that'll come with it. I want the campaign play. I want the extra, the streamlined changes they've made to the game. I've had a chance to play some of the new changes that they've made in the new version of this game that Steamforge Games is bringing back. This is an accessible skirmish game. And to me, one of the biggest draws, like I said already, is the solo and campaign play aspects of it. The fact that I'll be able to dive into it, to go through the enjoyment and the experience that I've had, but to combine it with a solo narrative arc where I can actually play it more frequently, more often. To me, that like many games, the biggest barrier to this is the fact that it doesn't always get tabled as much as I like, and making it accessible enough that I can dive into it. It's an accessible game. It's already accessible. They made it more accessible, and then adding in reasons to play it in a solo campaign, that has me very intrigued, in addition to the fact that I appreciate all the other changes, the extra faction, all the other stuff that I'll be going through there. Then we have Dune Warfare Arrakis. This is CMON's next game, and it's coming in September. I believe September 14th, I think the most recent announcement was. But Dune Warfare Arrakis from CMON Games. I like the world of Dune. I like CMON's titles. I'm very interested in this one. Will I actually get this or not? I imagine I will. I'm a sucker for most CMON titles. It's very infrequent that I don't get their games, and this one has me interested already, which means it's even more likely that I'll end up getting it, and I'm honestly realizing that I don't have the notify me button clicked. We've solved that problem now. But that's Dune for Arrakis. It seems like an easy win for me. An easy win meaning an easy back, not necessarily a win. I'll have to play it to determine if it's an easy win. Have not played it yet. I do know someone who has. They said it was very enjoyable, so we'll see. We'll have to find out. But overall, it looks cool from the designers of War of the Ring. So it has a design background that is definitely compelling. It has a theme that is compelling, and it has a whole bunch of miniatures that for some people are not compelling, but for me they certainly are. Then we have Project Draft over here, Keyforge Winds of Exchange. This is another one of those that I hope I can stay strong and that I hope I could avoid backing. Keyforge is a collectible card game. A collectible card game that for a while went out of print, kind of, as they figured out the formula and eventually exchanged hands to Ghost Galaxy Gaming. And Keyforge is the newest version, the newest set of it, of the Winds of Exchange. This is one that wasn't as much on my radar, but it's more on my radar now ever since having played Soulforge. Soulforge, which has Richard Garfield in common as a creator, has some degrees of commonality, but very different games. But Soulforge, which was totally not on my radar until I played it and really enjoyed it, made me interested in Keyforge, and Keyforge, frankly, looks better. Now, I'll take the better gameplay over the game that looks better any day of the week. But I've heard enough good things about Keyforge that, combined with my new interest in Soulforge, combined with the design background from it, it makes me more interested in a game that I was totally not interested in the original editions of it. I'll see what happens this one. Again, it's another one I hope I don't back. It's easier to convince myself not to back them if I haven't actually. Maybe I'll get Keyforge. Maybe I'll grab a few Keyforge decks from the original and see if I want them. That's probably a bad idea. That'll probably make me back it more. We'll see. We'll figure it out. In any case, from there, we have Majesty of Dragons. This is another one I've had a chance to play. I'll have coverage on the channel for this one. This is a two-player head-to-head game of trying to collect dragons and trying to figure out how to go back and forth to achieve your win condition before your opponent does. There's multiple win conditions, which means whatever you do, what your opponent's reacting to, and then you're constantly going back and forth reacting to each other, it works really well as far as the multiple win conditions and how it plays off, resulting in a dance of back and forth as to which dragons to collect, which ability cards, which lores. You're trying to figure out how to gather all the right things to drive the game forward and to result in a win for you. Works really, really well. Not a huge fan of the graphic design here. The art and the actual cards is great. Boxes looks okay, but overall, it's one that I would not be on my radar except for the fact that I've played it and really enjoyed it, and because of that, it's another one of those solid two-player head-to-head games that you can knock out in 45 minutes. I have a bunch on my shelves, and this is another one that will be added to that. And then lastly, we have Redwood. This is another one that's kind of in the I don't know how it'll play out. Redwood from Sit Down Games. I've enjoyed many of their games. Sit Down Games often takes a unique design approach to their titles, and Redwood seems like it's going to be going with the same idea, with an idea of you have to estimate the distance, choose the right objective, photograph the animals. It's a game all about perspective, it seems, and a game that I'm curious about the unique mechanism it's going to bring to the table as far as how this one works and whether it'll be compelling or not. The art looks great. The miniatures look great. I generally like Sit Down's unique design approaches. Some of them have been not wins for me. I've liked many of them. I've loved Magic Maze. I loved Pachamama. The dive one, the one where you're diving into the water, not as much, felt a little gimmicky for me. So I am curious where this one will end up, but it's certainly one I'm interested in trying. Whether or not I back it, we'll find out. But that is the 10 games. These are the 10 games that I'm very interested in. I don't know how many of these I'll end up backing. If I have enough self-control, maybe 5 or 6, but that's like the lowest possible number. I already know I like many of these games, just makes it harder for me. And after a long enough hiatus in how much and how frequently I back, it looks like September is going to be an expensive month for me. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Quack&Co, where less time watching means more time playing.